Hi everyone, thanks for joining today. So today's session is going to be focused around Defender for Cloud Apps. Um, Let me just get this going here. So my name's Gareth Young. I'm the founder and chief architect of Levacloud. We are a Microsoft security and compliance partner that works closely with the nonprofit Tech for Social Impact group over at Microsoft to, bring as much value as we can across these different tools that are part of the E3 and the E5 security and compliance stack. Now, this particular area is focused on CASB or Cloud Access Service Broker. I like to describe CASB as essentially being threat protection, except focus on your actual cloud applications at the service level. So something a little bit different to, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office. But with this tool, they all integrate together. So you're going to see as we sort of go through this how all that integration works, and the layers of protection that you might not even realize exist that this tool can provide. So yeah, let's jump in. And also on the call today, we've got Florin from Microsoft on the product team who's going to maybe show us a little bit of this if we've got some time towards the end here. Now, let's take a glance into how the SaaS app market has changed. So, as organizations continue to grow their SaaS app usage, we see the amount of spend on these services going up significantly, and cloud misconfigurations are considered one of the top risks when it comes to SaaS applications. The SaaS app challenge has changed the way that organizations think about application protection, and it's critical to use a holistic strategy to provide complete protection for your applications. Now, the traditional cloud access service broker or CASB model focused on discovering, sanctioning, and blocking apps. And that kind of addressed the sort of issue of shadow IT, where you might have, marketing off on the corner, paying for some random application that nobody knows about with a corporate purchasing card. Now, that sort of situation has always been a problem, but with the sort of rise of the use of SaaS apps, the priorities kind of shifted. It's not so much about blocking access to unsanctioned apps. There's actually more, around the risk of apps that have been sanctioned, and how they're being used. Um, Ensuring that those sanctioned apps are, set up to best practice, compliant with your different organizational standards is really critical to SaaS security. Now, Defender for Cloud Apps does way more than just a typical CASB from, another vendor like Palo Alto or something like that. It's not just there to show you what people are accessing and let you mark it as blocked or allowed. First off, Microsoft's security platform is exactly that. You could argue it almost stands on top of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem now as a standalone security platform, because not only will it work with Entra and all those underlying tools, but it also works with other third-party identity providers. It'll work with Microsoft Threat Protection and Information Protection as well. It'll give you really deep insights into security posture for all of your cloud resources and applications. And it also has app governance capabilities that you can define to enforce different behaviors for OAuth applications. Now, as I sort of touched on, this is part of Defender for Microsoft Defender XDR. So the full extended detection and response tool set that you get as part of the E5, A5, G5 security licensing. And there's a lot of integration between these tools, and specifically in the frame of Defender, Defender for Endpoint, super deep integration there to give you a lot of insights about what users are actually doing on those endpoints, and to help provide coverage across the spectrum of zero trust security, essentially, all those different sort of pillars, whether it's identity, endpoints, cloud apps, network, data, All these tools kind of come together to support and protect across the entire spectrum. Now, let's discuss the discovery of shadow IT and the governing of applications. So, with this rise of cloud services, users adopt new apps rapidly and they make it challenging to really keep up, right? There's so many different cloud apps appearing every other day, and, whether they're generative AI or something else, users like shiny new things. And being able to identify and discover those different applications is really key to secure them appropriately. We need to get an understanding of not only which apps are users accessing, but what are they doing with them. So one common thing that I see when we do app discovery with this tool is you get users that are off doing weird things, like they're taking potentially sensitive data and uploading it through, strange free web apps for converting things to PDF, for example. And that opens up the risk of sensitive data, whether it's healthcare, whether it's PII, whether it's financial, being leaked through some sort of potentially insecure third-party public-facing website. And that's the kind of stuff that we need to govern and block. And because there's more and more applications that are both sanctioned and unsanctioned potentially, that are getting added to the environment all the time, it just introduces a lot of risk being able to wrap guardrails around that. We joke about firewalling the internet. You can't wrap a firewall around all of these different cloud applications to secure them. That's why zero trust security exists. Instead of using the network perimeter to secure everything, we pivot off of user identity instead. And that's a big part of how this tool aligns with zero trust. And misconfigurations I mentioned a moment ago, those are a big deal. They can lead to potential breaches. Threat actors are always looking for the easy way in. They're not going to go after someone who's got, all the CISA security baselines deployed and FIDO2 authentication and all that kind of stuff. They're looking for low-hanging fruit that they are aware of across all the different SaaS applications that are out there that give them an easy way in to exfiltrate data or do whatever they're going to do. And really, you need a way to manage your apps and implement controls to ensure that they are set up and configured safely. Now, Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps basically enables you to manage all this shadow IT by giving you visibility into the apps that are used in the organization. It actually assesses their risk as well. So you can go in and look at the apps that your users have been accessing, which it basically identifies through integration with Defender for Endpoint, or as we'll talk about in a bit, you can send firewall traffic logs into it as well. And then when you see these apps and you review the risk scoring that's been assigned to them, which is generated based on publicly available information, you can then decide if you're going to allow it or block it, essentially. So sanction it or block it. And this is, kind of like a continuous life cycle with 3 different phases. So discover and identify. That's kind of where everyone starts with this tool. What are users actually doing? What's out there? Then moving into the sort of evaluate and analyze. And it's kind of cool because in that phase of things, when you've got a good data set in there, you can generate high-level reports to share with executives and that kind of thing. It'll even actually export it in a PDF format for you. And then manage and continuously monitor. So the sort of continuous improvement part of the cycle, going in there on a regular basis, looking for alerts popping up in Defender, telling you when someone's accessed a new high volume application, I think it calls it, where lots of users have jumped on some new popular application, so that you can kind of continually manage this stuff. Now, there's a bit of a process that you can kind of follow to do what I just described, and there's a little bit of a workflow here. So, first off, should the employees be using the app based on productivity and security implications of it? If the answer to that question is yes, it's like, okay, so we're going to sanction this app. Does IT need to audit it or manage it? And if the answer to that question is no, then you're all set, good to go, move on. If the answer, however, is yes, then it's okay. Let's apply some controls to the application, and that might be, connecting to conditional access or data loss prevention to create, session-based controls or even data privacy-based controls based on your data loss prevention policies in Microsoft Purview. It might be, having some extra levels of control from Entra itself, focused around single sign-on, identity management, provisioning users into the app, that kind of thing, deprovisioning them, when they move to a new role or something like that. If, however, on the flip side, you decide, well, no, this app should not be getting accessed, then that's when you would just unsanction it. And when I say unsanction it, the way that actually works is it blocks it from Defender for Endpoint at the device level. So it doesn't matter if the user is on the network or off the network. It's going to follow them regardless of where they go. You're not reliant on some edge appliance for that to work. And then, there's the kind of gray area where you're not really sure what you should do. In that kind of area, you can put the app into a monitor mode, which will actually show a warning to the user saying, hey, IT's monitoring the use of this application, click here to continue, kind of thing. And it just lets you sort of gauge what sort of usage the application's getting. And if the user really shouldn't be using it in the first place, that might be enough so that they just stop, and then you could eventually unsanction it. Now, moving on from the sort of cloud discovery side of things, let's talk a little bit about SaaS security posture management. So really, this is all about automated continuous monitoring of your SaaS applications to, reduce security risks, boost compliance. It basically identifies misconfigurations and offers remediations to ensure that the app's aligned with security best practices. So this is quite similar to CSPM, or Cloud Security Posture Management, which is basically something that gives you security recommendations for your IaaS and PaaS workloads like virtual machines and storage accounts and that kind of thing that you might spin up inside of Azure or AWS. It's that, except for your SaaS applications. So let's kind of look at a few different use cases related to this. So first off, visibility into misconfigurations. You might find things like MFA settings that are wrong, issues with password policies, challenges around audit trail not being turned on, that kind of thing. And this is stuff that when you connect Defender for cloud apps to your different SaaS applications, it can do. Like, for example, if you were to connect it to Salesforce, it can feed into the Microsoft Secure Score, so you can see all of these different sort of security posture recommendations. So again, it's not just a platform that's there to protect Microsoft capabilities anymore. This is a multi-cloud security platform that's here to protect your data, your users, your devices, regardless of what cloud they're in. And yeah, it's really cool. You can go further than just the sort of pre-canned things. You can set up, different custom checks and assessments and things like that as well, just depending on the use case. Now, app misconfigurations really are a significant attack vector, and a lot of times they can be mitigated with sort of simple adjustments. You can see here a few examples of things that commonly pop up. Clear text credentials, excessive admin roles, dormant entries. We see a lot of this stuff, and I've even had it to where compromising a non-profit customer in particular that I'm thinking of just now happened from another app that wasn't appropriately secured with MFA, and they were then able to pivot through that into their accounting servers in Azure. And then, potentially they could have kept going from there to get into the Microsoft 365 cloud environment had they not been kind of caught at that point. So yeah, being able to get sort of visibility onto those other entry points, if you will, and insights into what to sort of adjust to remove any misconfigurations is super crucial. And yeah, Defender for Cloud Apps can solve for that. Now, going back to the cloud discovery side of things, I talked about how that dashboard gets populated with the different applications that users are accessing so you can make risk decisions and potentially block them. There's two different flavors of that. So the net is if you have like E5 level licensing, E5, G5, A5, you can just do the discovery with Defender for endpoint, like I mentioned. It doesn't matter where the device is, on the network, off the network, you'll be able to get that data and you'll be able to sort of block it. At the E3 level, Microsoft 365 E3, you do get a more basic level of licensing for this cloud discovery. And you can have it basically collect logs from your firewall and forward it into um, Defender for Cloud Apps. It'll generate the same report, and I think they now have it to where you could even generate blocking rules to put on the firewall. But that's a kind of a little bit more sort of a scaled down version. And they've got integrations here as well for different secure web gateway things like Zscaler, IBOS, that sort of thing. So it's pretty extensible, and there's options for folks, at multiple licensing levels, meaning this just isn't gated to E5 customers. So highly recommend exploring this if you're on a Microsoft 365 E3 for sure. So yeah, here's some next steps to kind of tackle that first section, and that's like definitely where you want to begin, to start using Defender for Cloud Apps. That's where we begin with all of our customers. But next, what we're going to do is kind of talk about some of the advanced capabilities. So moving, beyond all the basic cloud application and security posture management to talk about how information protection plays into the picture here. So essentially, when it comes to data, you got three different types. You've got your data at rest, which is essentially stored data that's not actively moving. So that could be, files saved on devices or in cloud storage. You've got data in use, which is like being actively processed. So if you think about live editing documents, modifying files, and you really need to monitor that sort of stuff to identify changes and assess risk. And then your data in motion, where it's getting transferred across network boundaries, potentially exposing it to unauthorized access. So whether it's being sent an email, uploaded to a different cloud application, whatever it happens to be. Now, Microsoft Purview actually integrates with with Defender for Cloud Apps. And Purview, which is the whole compliance platform that has DLP and sensitivity labeling and all that good stuff in it. Policies that you create there, you can apply to data traveling to other cloud applications, other SaaS applications, so that those protections that you've built out or are looking to build out for, SharePoint, OneDrive, so on and so forth, can be extended into these other cloud ecosystems where you might be actually putting data. Now, I touched on, zero trust and how all of this kind of rolls on back up to it. We talked about you can't firewall the internet. Identity really is the new perimeter. Anything that you sort of design or think about as you're putting together your security strategy and, architecture for how you're going to adopt all these different cloud capabilities, identity needs to be at the forefront of that. And the really cool thing with Defender for Cloud Apps is building off of that concept, we've got capabilities in here to, like, real time during the user's session, not only monitor, but if their security status changes, like they suddenly become high risk for some reason, then we can apply policies in real time to, make them have read-only access, block uploading or downloading, and even like block access from unmanaged devices. All of that can be done on the fly with different session control policies that you get from Defender for Cloud Apps, and into its integration with Microsoft Entra and conditional access. And again, doesn't matter what cloud application they're accessing. Microsoft's a common place to start, but if you guys are building out Dynamics, or you're using AWS, or Adobe's cloud, all of these protections can be extended to those areas as well. And because of the nature of essentially all the traffic going through this thing, because when you're doing single sign-on with Microsoft Entra, and then enabling its integration with Defender for Cloud Apps, you're able to see what users are doing if you choose to, and that traffic will get proxied essentially through Defender for Cloud Apps. It's like a reverse proxy in the cloud in a sense, except way more modern than that. So you can get alerted when different scenarios occur, and you can implement controls when different scenarios occur as well. Whether it's, again, going back to enforcing additional MFA prompts, or blocking the ability to download, that kind of thing, or just generally alerting so that you can take your own actions. Now, talking about that sort of session monitoring type capabilities, they call it basically adaptive access. So these decisions that I described can be made based on a number of different factors or signals, whether it's the user, their location, the device they're accessing, the permissions that they have in a given application, the sensitivity of the actual data they're accessing, like down to the file level, and any sort of risk that's associated with their session. All of this stuff can be brought together to do all the things I described, blocking the download, upload, that kind of thing. And even in some cases, you can actually have it apply sensitivity labels in line as the files getting uploaded to a given cloud application. So it adds a lot more capability and visibility, like I say, beyond just the boundaries of Microsoft 365. Now, going back to session control again and being able to do things in real time. So you can see sort of an example here of we've had a particular set of conditions occur, and this user's been blocked from doing something in Microsoft Teams. There's a few different reasons why you might want to do this. So for example, let's say the user triggered a location-based policy or something like that, or their risk level went up. You suddenly don't want them to access Microsoft Teams. Or, honestly, maybe they're getting terminated, right? And you need to immediately remove their access. That's where this real-time session app control can come into play. Now, some of the other kind of interesting things as well, in this new sort of era of generative AI, using these tools and capabilities to do things like stop a user from pasting sensitive information into like a chat GPT or a Google Bard or something like that. We can actually create different policies down to the sensitivity level to stop them from doing that. So let's say, for example, generally you were okay with them using public Copilot or ChatGPT or Google Bard, but the moment you see them put a credit card number on the clipboard, you want to block them from actually pasting it into that different application. That's kind of a big part of what you can do with these different real-time controls and with the data loss prevention capabilities in Purview as well. And the really cool thing with this is it doesn't matter if the app is being signed into from like Entra or Okta or even Ping. Defender for Cloud Apps can still integrate there to enable these capabilities. And all this basically comes together to just bring a whole other layer of value and depth to the administrative experience. That sort of selective routing to Defender for Cloud Apps based on the session risk that was maybe determined by conditional access, or taking advantage of these tools to protect on-premise applications. So there's a capability that comes in the E3 licensing called Microsoft Entra ID Application Proxy. And again, it's a cloud-based reverse proxy, but essentially any application that you have on your network that's public facing today, you can completely remove the firewall ports so it's not exposed to the internet and use the application proxy to publish it through the Microsoft Cloud instead. And it actually works on like an outbound basis so that, like I say, you don't need to have anything open on the firewall. It completely removes the attack surface for the application. We have a lot of folks that are looking at this for maybe legacy apps or apps that they want to keep in the on-prem data center, and they want to stay away from or replace VPN capabilities, that kind of thing. So not only does that capability exist in an E3 and is available to you, but you can then layer in all these different controls that I talked about through Defender for Cloud Apps, and its integration with conditional access. And the thing about this is, simple to deploy. Yeah, there's no client at all. So this is a completely agentless solution in the sense that everything just goes through Microsoft Entra. So you can get to these apps from any device and have all these security controls that I'm describing without some sort of client there. So for example, let's say that I'm generally okay with folks going to Salesforce from a personal device, but I don't want them to have the ability to download documents from it. With these tools, a user can do that from their unmanaged device, and because the traffic's getting routed through or redirected through Defender for Cloud Apps, like it'll block them from downloading. So it's quite powerful that way. And then again, this will work with any identity provider, for the most part, all the major ones. So very flexible, Microsoft standing on its own 2 feet as a sort of security provider over and above the productivity tools, honestly. Now, going deeper on this theme of sensitive data. So, with the increase in usage of cloud apps, it is hard to validate and protect sensitive data. And by using Defender for Cloud Apps and the integrations that I mentioned for Microsoft Purview information protection, you can completely wrap it around all of these different cloud ecosystems that you might have access to. And yeah, it literally does not matter where the data resides or where you're moving it to. Like if you fully kind of deploy these capabilities, it will secure regardless. And the really cool thing with Purview is out of the box, there's over 300 different types of sensitive information that it can actually recognize. And there is a lot of crazy stuff in that list. I mean, it's got all the standard stuff like, bank accounts, tax IDs, credit card numbers, healthcare data, that kind of thing. But if you are in an organization that has like GDPR requirements across multiple European countries, it could recognize all their stuff as well. Or if you're in a technology-focused company with cloud infrastructure, or have concerns about password management and credential management, like it can out of the box detect all sorts of API keys, passwords, database strings, all that kind of stuff. I mean, we've turned it on in some environments before when we've been doing discovery and clearly identified users just sharing passwords and clear text across Teams chats and emails and that kind of thing. So there's a lot there. But then, some organizations like our education customers that we work with, they have a lot of sort of things that are unique to them, and you can create what they call custom sensitive information types so that you can tell Purview, hey, this is what a document with GPAs or something like that looks like. Name your custom thing, and you can build it with a query system and have it detect it. There's a few different mechanisms it supports, and it's not all about OneDrive. Doesn't matter. Any cloud storage, this thing will work with it. Very extensible. Now, getting this thing up and running, really, there's 3 main stages to use it. So first of all, you need to connect your apps so that you can actually get visibility into the risk in them and quantify how exposed that you are. Once you've got your apps connected, build DLP policies alongside Defender for Cloud Apps so that you can start to apply different policies and get automated encryption and things like that in place. And then, once you have those capabilities actually there and in place, really it's going through a period of, monitoring. Things are going to need tuned. They always do. False positives occur. It's never going to be 100% straight away, but it's very very easy to really see why something's triggering. Like there's a lot of really good granular data to show you so that you can tune those policies and make adjustments. Like for example, we see sometimes full names when they're paired with certain things coming up as a false positive because maybe someone's got emails or documents with some names in it, but it's like just a generic form or something like that, and it's going off as a false positive. So we can then make adjustments to say, hey, actually only trigger on this type of data if you see 4 full names and one tax ID and whatever else. So yeah, that tuning process will go on for a bit, and then from there it's just kind of rinse and repeat as you roll it out across your different sort of cloud applications. Now, there are, some other different things to consider as part of these integrations. So, just to cherry pick some of the key things here, the automated actions like deciding what you want to do. So I highlighted that, you can do encryption. So depending on the app and what you're focusing the policy on, you could do anything from forwarding an email of information to a certain group of people all the way down to, blocking the ability for the user to do whatever it is they're trying to do. But it's not all 0 and 1. We can have some granularity in between, maybe triggering encryption on a file, applying a sensitivity label to it, that kind of thing. And you could take it a step further as well, and use Power Automate to take additional actions when something's detected. Maybe you want it to send your security team a message inside of Teams when it detects a particular file being shared in a certain way. And then also like open a ticket inside of ServiceNow because you happen to use that as your ITSM tool, and then maybe do a few other things as well, depending on the severity of the incident. Like, I don't know, you might even want to go as far as blocking the user's access or something like that. So yeah, a lot of really, really robust capability here, and deep integration between these tools, and that's why it's like kind of it comes together as a whole solution when you pair the Defender Security Suite alongside Purview, the compliance suite, which comes as part of that E5 licensing too. I mean, you do get a level of it in E3, but to really fully take advantage of all these CASB capabilities and wrap this additional security around it, you need to go to that kind of higher level there. And this is something that we are seeing some nonprofits move towards for sure. I mean, we support numerous on their journey as they start off, honestly, start off with Intune, work their way into Defender once they've maximized their E3 licensing, and then start to maybe consolidate other security and compliance tools that they've got. And, as they build out Defender for cloud apps and then start looking at the compliance side of things with Purview, add that into the mix as well. So, it's a little bit of a journey, but this is to sort of help you understand the sequence of events that you might want to go on as you're going through this stuff, essentially. And here's just a little view of the sort of life cycle of sensitive data in the cloud when we're protecting it with these sort of capabilities. So you can imagine the user uploads a sensitive file to a cloud app. We have it set up so that automatically it's classified with something to protect the file. Maybe it's highly confidential because it's got 23 account numbers in it, and we want it to automatically encrypt. And then, in this instance here, the user tries to share the sensitive file with an external user. That just doesn't work because it was classified as highly confidential, and only certain privileged people within the organization are allowed to view it. And because that event happened, the admin team receives an alert. So yeah, these are the sort of steps that we just went over to really get information protection going. A lot of folks don't even realize that integration exists, but as you start to do more and more across different SaaS ecosystems and your data gets put into them, then this is definitely something you need to seriously look at to make sure that you're not only safeguarding the organization and its reputation, but your compliance with any different, compliance standards that you've got to adhere to. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about app governance and app-to-app protections. So you've probably seen a little bit of this already potentially, because there has been a lot of OAuth related threats out there with fake OAuth apps and that kind of thing. So if you think about the Calendlys of the world, where someone's gone out and tried to sign up to some new application that's actually not real, and then they click a button that says, grant this access to my mailbox or something like that. But actually it gives it way excessive permissions and connects it into Office 365, and that can lead to sort of a breach type situation. So I'm sure some of you have maybe had to wrap some different security controls around that kind of thing. Now, I've started off working with different customers where, they're like, hey, okay, I understand this isn't configured correctly and we need to lock it down. Great, but what do we have actually in here already? And how is it handling our data? So there's kind of drawing the line in the sand to secure OAuth app access, and then kind of taking a step back to say, hey, what's in here already that we need to deal with? Because some of these applications, especially if they do turn out to be malicious, can be excessively taking data out of the environment, essentially. And talking about that kind of thing, a little bit of a sort of timeline here. So going back a few years now, think about this: 2019. So some user, their error led to a compromised app identity getting broad, inappropriate access to the environment. And then come along 2020, the bad actors, they start targeting trusted, overprivileged applications. And they actually say about 25% of the apps that are consumed by S&P 500 companies are like way overprivileged. And then, look at 2022, an actor uses an OAuth consent phish to access an app and exfiltrate data. And if you have the Microsoft app governance in place, it'll show you these applications so that you can quickly kind of shut them down. But year over year, these types of threats are growing, and they're coming up with new and creative ways to approach them. So we need a way to sort of protect ourselves against these different threat vectors. And essentially, there's two solutions for cloud app control and protection. You've got app access control, which is managed by Entra itself, and then app usage control, which is managed by Defender for Cloud Apps. So, Defender for Cloud Apps is essentially there to not only discover and manage all these different apps that you might want to sanction or unsanction, but you can govern the use of them and also, enforce different security policies around them. It's quite powerful stuff. And, the key things that you need to answer is, okay, all of these apps that have been added to the tenant, what are they doing with my data? There's a great dashboard that shows you that inside of Defender for Cloud Apps. How can you control how an app behaves with your data and your users? So Defender for Cloud Apps actually has policies that you can enable to control app behavior when it's connected to the environment. And the alerts from these different policies are integrated into Defender, so they would show up in your Defender dashboard, and also Microsoft Sentinel as well if you adopt Microsoft's SIM capability. And if an app misbehaves, app governance has got machine learning type detections in it, and it can actually take automated remediation against different apps that are doing weird and wonderful things. And essentially, all of this sort of capability aligns back to our zero trust security model. And Microsoft does take action against a lot of these different apps that are targeting the 365 ecosystem. I mean, they will shut it down if there's something out there that's confirmed to be malicious. But at a macro level, these tools give you the visibility to control these apps, limit the data that goes to them, or if you do want data to go to them, make sure it's appropriately protected with the sensitivity labels and any policies and actions that are behind those. And here's just a little view at the sort of rule creation ecosystem so that you can create different policies and rules to control those apps. So final piece on this part of today's presentation. So here's just some next steps if you want to get started with app governance. Again, discovery, that's the best place to start. Move into a proof of concept phase if you do want to start controlling some of these applications, and then build out some different policies and such like based on what you find. Now, Florin, do you want to maybe take people on a little tour of the Cloud Discovery dashboard and maybe a couple of other things inside of Defender for Cloud Apps?
Yes, of course. I'm gonna share my screen if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. I hope that you can see it.
Yes, it's fine.
Perfect. So one of the things that I would like to highlight here is that I'm connected to security.microsoft.com. Okay, the same portal where, as we have previously seen, Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Office, and now Cloud Apps. Okay, so we are under the same portal. We don't need to change anything else. We have a dedicated section, a dedicated menu for Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps Security. So it's Cloud Apps with Cloud Discovery. Now I'm connected to my test tenant where I have some data ingested here. I have the main dashboard. I can see the discovered apps. I can see the discovered resources, IP addresses, users, and devices. But if I will go back to the last 90 days, this is the maximum time frame where I can see my data going out, going in, and so on. I can see how many apps my users into my tenant have been using, IP addresses, how many users, how many devices, and what is the traffic overall, right? I have 9 gigabytes upload and 8 download. So this is the segregation by users, right? So I have my admin with a total traffic of 13. I have my user 1 with almost 2 gigabytes, user 3 with 1 gigabytes, and so on. And also going down, I can see the headquarters, right? I can see basically the locations from where my users have been connected, downloading, using the internet, let's say overall. Discovered apps, I have the entire list of the applications, right, that my users have been using for their activities, daily activities, right? Now, on the Cloud App Catalog, one cool thing that I would like to highlight in here, and what we have seen during the presentation, are the applications that can be sanctioned and unsanctioned. Now, the term is a bit, let's say, not correctly used, let's say, because in my English, when I speak about unsanctioned, basically is going to allow me to block, right? But on the other hand, if I use sanction, it's going to show me the apps that have been allowed. So sanction should be, let's say, blocked, unsanctioned, allowed, but yeah, this is the wording around Defender for Cloud Apps. Now, on the unsanctioned, as you can see here, I have blocked YouTube, Facebook, Messenger, Netflix, and Spotify. But I have a lot of applications in here, split by multiple categories. I can see hosting services, IT services, productivity apps, education, marketing, and so on. So each application has its own score, right? Risk score. So we can see exactly what is the risk that using this specific application will imply for my end users, maybe. And I will take an example in here for one unsanctioned app that I'm having. Facebook Messenger, right? I can see that is not compliant with remember passwords. It is, however, compliant with MFA, file sharing, users can upload the data, and so on. When it comes to the compliance, ISO, some of them are missing. From the legal perspective, I can see that we have GDPR protection, we have data retention policy with delete, and so on. So we are, let's say, somewhere in the middle, and we have a 9 as a score, as a risk score. But going down, for example, Spotify, we have a score of 7, right, which should raise some questions for our organization when it comes to the compliance data that can be, let's say, used and so on. However, we can see that it's not compliant with GDPR. It has a low score overall for the compliance part and so on. But now, what actually implies unsanctioned, right? It will block the access on my applications that are installed on my end users' computers, right? It is not going to block, let's say, the usage if I will connect to Facebook.com and I'm going to use the messenger, right, inside Facebook. It's going to block the application itself because Facebook has its own app that can be downloaded and used, same as Spotify, Netflix, and so on. I have a quick demo that I would like to show you a bit later because I would like to move next on the policies, right? We have some policy templates that are already pre-built into each tenant, right? So we have policies already created, applied on tenant level by default. So we can go from the beginning with a minimum set of protection. If you want to go more in a granular way, right, you can create your own policies. You can create threat detection policies. We have the integration with information protection, like we have seen during the presentation. We have conditional access, right? So we can create conditional access policies, right, and combine them with Defender for Cloud Apps by having an access policy, a session policy, and so on. On the app level, we have a shadow IT, right? So we can create and we can go even in depth with our app discover policy. All policies, right? Those are the policies that are created and applied to my devices into this tenant. Now we have the templates created by default applied, and we can go in a more granular way by creating custom policies according to our needs. Now I will stop the screen sharing because I would like to jump into my virtual machine in order to show you exactly how sanctioned and unsanctioned apps are working. So on my desktop, as you can see, I have Messenger app, I have LinkedIn app, and Spotify. Remember that we did not see LinkedIn as unsanctioned app, so by default, I should have access in connecting and using LinkedIn app on this virtual machine. Okay, so I have the email address, I have the password, and I will be able to sign in and connect. If I will go on Facebook Messenger, as you can see, it's gonna stop me from using it, right? So I cannot use this application to connect and chat with my Facebook friends. On the Spotify, however, we have a small difference here. I'm able to open the app, right? I can see the login page, but if I will click on login, I will be redirected on Edge browser to connect, but no, right? Since this is blocked, since this is unsanctioned, I'm not able to connect and to log in on my Spotify account. As you have seen, on the notification part, we have received this content is blocked by your IT admin. This is the end user message, right? Notifying me as an end user that I'm not allowed to use Facebook or Spotify. When I will use or I will try to connect to Messenger or Spotify, I will have an alert raised into the portal. So as an admin, I will be able to see that I have user 1, user 3, and so on that tried to connect and used, the Facebook app, Spotify, and so on. Everything will be notified, will be opened in incidents in here, right? We will have an incident called custom network indicator. So someone tried to connect to facebook.messenger.com. This is the integration that we have allowed in the global settings, right? So we have allowed the integration between Defender for Cloud App Security and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. So we have allowed this, this integration. I have generated another incident in here, right? As you can see, file shared with personal email address involving one user. As you can see, we have a detection source, Defender for Cloud Apps, right? According to the policies that I have created, I have blocked, right, or I have added in audit mode to be notified when someone will try to share some, files, documents, and so on with its own email address, personal email address. Okay, so I have blocked, right, the sharing of sensitive information files with my personal email address. This is one way where you can block data exfiltration. We can combine as well as, like we have seen during the presentation, information protection by having a data loss prevention policy with Defender for Cloud Apps. And we will be having another incident that is going to be opened. It's going to be something like data exfiltration incident and so on. Now I have 100 alerts, so I was able to try to simulate sharing, right, outside of the organization using a personal email address, 100 files. Everything got blocked, and I have, of course, the timeline. I have all the assets, all the alerts opened. I can see the assets. What is the application, right? Defender, OneDrive, and also I have the admin. Right, so my admin tried, to exfiltrate some data. I don't have any investigations, right? But I can see what are the files, what are the evidences. I have 92 files. I have the name of the files. I can see exactly the location, what they contain, and so on. With the proper permissions in place, with the least privilege access as an admin, I will not be able to open that specific file to see exactly what it contains, right? So you should work from the beginning by having in mind the least privilege access and give the proper access, the proper permissions to the right persons. Because being a security admin, it doesn't mean that you need to have access and see what is the file, what's inside that specific file, because it may contain sensitive data. Maybe you have a compliance engineer that will take a look on that file, analyze it, and will take the proper actions accordingly. Now, we have two more minutes. This is the Defender for Cloud Apps in a nutshell, with cloud discovery, seeing exactly what is the traffic, how many apps have been used, what are the IP addresses, devices, traffic by user, and so on. On the Cloud App Catalog, again, we have all the apps that are in Defender for Cloud Apps security, split by multiple categories. We can see only sanctioned apps if we want, and also we can see the unsanctioned apps, the blocked apps that we have added, and also we have seen how Spotify got blocked, how Messenger got blocked from running on my specific endpoint. On the policies, again, we have the granular way, let's say, to create Cloud App security policies, and also we have the templates that will allow us to have a start, a proper control in place for our files, threads, file sharing with unauthorized domain in this case, and so on. Pretty straightforward to have it in place, pretty easy to use, and it's going to help a lot with the compliance part.
That's perfect. That's great. Thank you, Florin, for sharing that with everyone here.
Yeah.
So, real quick, as I know we're about to hit time, if you have any questions, pop them in the Q&A section and we can answer them. And obviously, Tony's going to reach out from our team to share the slides with everyone and also the recording. And if you think of anything afterwards, feel free to ask him and he can ask me or Florin for that matter. And yeah, if you wouldn't mind taking a moment of your time to provide some feedback on today's session as well, that'd be great. And finally, keep a lookout in 2 weeks from today, we're going to be doing a session on data governance plus AI and Purview, Microsoft Copilot. So going deeper into Purview and also talking about how you can protect generative AI and Copilot with those capabilities too. So hope to see some of you there at that one. But yeah, we'll just hang out here for another minute or so if anyone's got any questions. But further than that, I appreciate everyone joining us today, everyone's time, and hope to see you on the next one. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And there's the link for anyone that wants to sign up to the next session. Thanks again. Bye just now.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.